learning is just listen to your wife.
It's good life advice. Really.
Yeah, it's good general advice.
This is Robbie Bear and Jeremy Carroll with We Who Dad podcast. We are joined today by our good friend Janakan, a serial entrepreneur, a father of two, living in Singapore, and we're just excited to get to talk to him about being a dad and being an entrepreneur. Well, it's awesome to be able to have you on.
It's awesome to be here.
Just taken a very long flight to get here. Tell us a little bit about maybe your experiences as an entrepreneur. You're on the cutting edge on a lot of things. And the question for us is, Jeremy is the father of three. I got 4 kiddos myself, and we're always trying to figure out how we can be better dads. And maybe just kind of talk about we'll start out with the work-life balance. You kind of talk about you being an entrepreneur, which we know is an all-encompassing thing, and how you kind of walk as a dad doing that.
Yeah, thanks. Well, just to give you some background, so, my first company was very successful. My second was a complete disaster. So usually people try to do it the other way around. I, failed at even doing that. So, and I'm basically on my third set of companies, which is quite fun. Work-life balance. I really couldn't lecture anybody on work-life balance. I do try. I try and be home at least, for bedtime and on weekends. I moved my office to upstairs, so shorter commute.
Something I think that's so interesting and unique too is obviously you're an amazing Christian man. I've known you for 20 years, so you're an amazing dude. But you you do international business, so that's kind of an interesting thing too, because it's like, even you taking a trip to here, it's like, takes 3 days. Yeah. And 3 days, back. I wonder if you even talk about are there structures that you have kind of with your wife or from because you both live in a city that you didn't grow up in, yep. So maybe talk a little bit about how does that work from a family perspective?
Yeah, it's not easy. I did a trip in February where I was away for 2 weekends, and my daughter started sending me messages like, "Are you ever coming back?" And I said,
"No." So
I said, "I'm coming back soon," and she said, "Don't tell me soon. Give me an exact number of days."
Wow! So it shows you she's very smart.
She's very smart, and So I decided then that my rule was that I wasn't going to be away for more than 1 weekend. So maximum is 2 weekends, but. I mean, the problem with that is because it does take, for example, to come to the US, which is, our biggest market outside Asia, takes 1.5 days basically to get here. And then it's the opposite time zone. So I'm half asleep, both directions. So it's not easy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting too, because I've noticed that there's kind of been a trend where entrepreneurs will bring their kids with them. Mm-hmm. Have you kind of, followed that? Is it, or have you done it more of a deep separation between, your work and your...
I would love to bring my kids. My kids would love to come. They would probably just come here and hang out with your kids, play with all your animals.
What's the ages of your kids?
6 and 4. Okay. 3, almost 4. So they would love to. I mean, the challenge is, of course, they're in school now, and so they have more structured days. Mm-hmm. And also, I don't know how well they would handle the constant jet lag and constant changes. But I'm sure they would love it. I'm sure my wife would love to come too for most of them. So,
do you think it's interesting because every culture has such a different kind of ethos and distinction? And, one of the things that was cool is that I actually got to bring my whole family out, and we visited you guys in Singapore and went to a conference out there. And one of the things that was interesting was that Singapore was probably the most kid-friendly city I've ever been in. And it's we went to, and I remember you took us, which my wife loves and still remembers to this day, a chocolate, all you could eat, chocolate bar, which was magical to a sweet tooth person. But they had, we brought Charlie, and they had baby chair just available, of course, and they had it all, and there was no problem. It wasn't even like it wasn't kind of like scoffing or whatever. Actually, I think we had two. I think we had Katarina too, and it was just like, oh yeah, of course. And I felt like, is that a skewed perspective, or do you think that in general Singapore seems very like sort of family centric, which is unique for like a big city style? It's almost like the society itself has wanted to like kind of welcome and like love kids, because I think my wife, like, she's gotten the opportunity to go with me. I have to travel quite a bit for work, and there's plenty of places around the country and the world where she's like, I don't want to go back to, but like Singapore was one of the places where she was just like, wow, this is awesome. Like everywhere, it wasn't like sometimes you get weird looks at a restaurant for like, you got a kid and they're making too much noise, because they're training to be persons. It's just like they're little people. It's messy. That's part of the thing. And a lot of society nowadays like doesn't accept that, But I thought the thing that was so unique is that like everywhere people were like overjoyed. It's like my dad went to this incredible church that like most of the parishioners were significantly older. And like whenever you brought a kid in there, like even if they were crying the whole time, the parishioners loved it. Yes. It was like the most welcoming place you've ever been to, because it's like they were so happy about the experience. You're just like, wow, this is great. Because a lot of society is like, oh, I can't believe it. So I think that's kind of a cool thing from a societal perspective to have that,
Yeah, I'll just tell you two funny stories. I mean, I definitely think that's true. And, different cultures are like that. And I think Singaporean Asian culture generally is like that. But definitely there's a difference in experience if you're a father taking your kids around versus a mother. So when my wife would take my kids around and they were misbehaving, she would get lots of comments from, the older ladies. We call them aunties, right? Okay. So the aunties would be like, telling her off. Whereas the kids would be even worse behaved with me, but because I was just the father with these kids, they took pity on me. And so they would be like holding the elevators for me. What a great dad. My kid is falling off the edge of the pram. It's just totally different standards, which is amazing for me as a father. But, on this topic, so we took our kids to Japan, and Japan, Japanese people, they're very polite. And, our kids, honestly, it felt like we took the worst behaved kids on the planet, totally not respecting the culture at all. My youngest, who at that time I think she was 1, she discovered that if she threw her chopsticks on the floor, that someone would give her a new one very quickly.
Oh, no.
And this was her game the whole time.
Oh my gosh.
I was mortified the whole trip until we got back to the airport and a kid had a tantrum, and I was so happy there was a
that you saw someone
tantrum.
That is interesting. It's interesting how it was different for us as foreigners who are not from there. Maybe they're more than like, it makes sense. I mean, my wife feels the same. We get the same way here. If you go to like the supermarket and she has 4 kids and they're bopping each other, they're just like, I can't believe this. And if I'm doing it, they're like, people have literally come up to me just like, you're such a brave dad. I was like, I didn't do anything. Like they're literally just attacking each other in the thing. Yeah. Like I'm just trying to keep them from killing each other or dying, Yeah. But that is kind of funny on that. But you, it's interesting because like you have a very unique perspective, because you've really spent time and lived in 3 different countries, and you did did you grow up in Hong Kong, or did you grow up, did you spend any time growing up in England at all, or is it almost primarily just Hong Kong?
Grew up in Hong Kong, lived there until I was 18, and then again from when I was 21 to 30. I mostly just lived in the UK. I mostly lived in Hong Kong growing up, although we spent a lot of summers in the UK. So, like,
do you feel like being a dad or a parent is different from when, like, how your parents were growing up in there? Do you feel like that, like, has that informed you? Are you following similar principles? Are you doing different principles, on it, or?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is I think my wife and I had different upbringings, partly because of the country we grew up in. And so in Hong Kong...
She grew up in the UK.
She grew up in the UK. Yeah. So I think in the UK, there is more permission for kids to be kids.
Okay.
Right? Whereas in Hong Kong, it's a bit more like, you better behave, you better follow the rules. Right?
Okay.
And so as a result, I I feel more anxiety when my kids are misbehaving in public than my wife does, right? And I'm more like, no, you've got to be quiet. You've got to be quiet. And my wife's just like, well, they're just being kids, right? But to kind of illustrate this difference, my niece and nephew, once they came from the UK, from Scotland, and they were visiting Hong Kong, and they were like 6 years old, and they got in so much trouble, like nonstop doing very normal things. So my 6-year-old niece, I think she was about 6, she got kicked out of the library
Wow.
for making too much noise.
Wow.
Now, in Scotland, you can make pretty much as much. Of course, you're supposed to be quiet.
Yeah.
But, as a child, you can pretty much do what you want.
Wow.
They're just excited that you're in the library.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas here, it was really like, in Hong Kong, it was a lot stricter. So I think I've internalized a lot of this, need to conform, which
Yeah.
my wife doesn't feel as strongly.
Do you have any advice about traveling with? Speaking of, like, one of the most biggest questions that we've had, and even one of our biggest podcasts, was talking about traveling with toddlers. And so, for our son Charlie, we went on well over 75 flights in the first year. But is there any thing that you kind of recommend as someone who's traveled long distances, so to the UK or things?
Well, I think I have 2 tips. The first is don't be too strict on your own rules. Like, my kids just like watching TV, and now I've learnt that on the plane. Now I've learnt that it's much easier for everyone if you just let them watch far too much TV, because they're happy. I'm happy that
Right.
flight attendants are happy. So I try and relax a little bit about those rules. My second learning is just listen to your wife. So she
Good life
always
advice, Ruth.
it's good general advice, but she likes to bring these massive bags full of every possible thing we could possibly need, right? And I tend to be like, we don't need any of that. We're just going super light, right? And of course, I feel very proud of myself until we get on the plane. And then we need something.
Right.
She's a bit like,
I told you.
Yeah.
I told you so.
yeah.
That's awesome. Are there any what are some things that you would love to tell, maybe dads who are starting? What do you feel like you love, that you've kind of learned? Maybe 2 or 3 things that you think that your family ethos carries.
Well, I love, I can't remember who suggested this idea of a daddy-daughter day, or in America, I think you call it daddy-daughter dates, right? But I've been doing that with my girls since very early, and I think it means a lot. My older one takes photos each time and then keeps them in a little
Oh, that's
book.
awesome.
So it means, I think it means a lot to her. My younger one has no idea what we're doing, but she's heard this idea, right, of a daddy-daughter day, and so she thinks it's exciting, right? And so on our first one, we went to McDonald's. Right?
Okay.
Great experience. But she kept saying, when are we going on Daddy-Daughter Day? And I kept saying, this is Daddy-Daughter Day. And she's like, no, it's something exciting. I was like, no, this is exciting. Be excited, child.
This is McDonald's.
So
Nowadays, I mean,
That's awesome.
McDonald's is like the price of a
That's
new car. So
That's a normal day. That's not even daddy-daughter anymore.
yeah.
that's where you take your wife.
But I think it's that building that relationship, right? From,
I love that.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm feeling convicted that I don't do that currently, unfortunately.
So yeah. I have learnt though that AI is slowly replacing me. So
Oh no.
my kids are growing up. I don't know how much your kids are exposed to, how much you expose them, but I introduced them to ChatGPT quite quickly, right? Mostly because they discovered they could create their own coloring book pictures,
Oh, wow.
right? So they write exactly what they want and then they get it. But it's quite, first of all, 2 things. They're definitely growing up as AI natives for 2 reasons. First of all, they get angry at ChatGPT or whatever because it takes 4 seconds to generate their image.
Oh,
Wow.
man.
My
Yeah.
mind is blown by the fact that
Wow.
it creates it.
Wow.
Right? The second thing which always amuses me is they will mention things and assume the AI knows what they're talking about, right? So they will talk about their friends, like, draw me a picture of Jessica in the park, with whatever, Snuggles the cat, right? But they won't say the cat, they'll just say Snuggles. And then it'll draw Jessica completely the wrong ethnicity, right? Snuggles
Right.
is like totally looks wrong, and they get angry at the AI for not knowing who they're talking about.
Yeah.
Wow.
But the reason I say it's replacing me as a father is, now when they
Hope not.
Oh, no.
when I yeah, I mean that a bit
Time to lock
facetiously.
the iPads.
Yeah. when I tell them stories, right, bedtime stories, I used to be able to just come up with a story. Now they give me prompts.
That is so funny.
Tell me a story about a girl who's 3 years old wearing this, and she is playing with a dog.
That is hilarious. That's funny.
So they've
Now you're
internalized
just Dad GPT now.
that GPT.
That's hilarious. I was gonna ask, like, since you introduced it with them pretty young, do you see, or what do you see as the future with these AI native kids now? Like, do you see them helping progress the technology, or are they going to be totally dependent on it, or what do you think is the outcome with something like this?
I think it's like us with the internet. I mean, I guess we didn't grow up with the internet, but technology certainly we grew up with.
Yeah.
And so it'll just be part of their existence, right? And I think they'll have a lot of challenges with it, but they'll also have a lot of fun. My daughter came up with her first business idea, which is because she wanted to print. She was shopping for swimwear, right? Swimsuit. I don't know what you guys call it. We call it swimming costume, which is very British, and I don't think you guys call it that. But we call it swimming costume. So she was shopping for her swimming costume, and she was very unhappy with the designs. And she's like, "Why can't I just chat GPT this, right?
Wow.
Like to get the exact design I want."
Wow.
And so then, she was like, "Oh, I should make a shop that lets you design all your clothes by typing in your prompts."
Wow, that's actually a great idea.
It's a great idea,
Yeah.
right? So
Uh-oh.
I think that they will come up with these kind of innovations that we've accepted that you just buy what's off the shelf.
Right. That's cool.
That is fascinating. Principles of Movie Guide is kind of training discernment for little people. So what have you done to kind of, because I would say that generally my kids are pretty Luddite at this current time. They read physical books and play outside on a farm. They know how to do a chicken or like different, they know how to ride a horse. But what do you do to kind of like protect, like for a parent who's maybe considering like introducing ChatGPT where the child has the ability to kind of access it? How are you kind of training with them skepticism or like a healthy skepticism that it might lie or anything like that?
It's a good question. I mean, first of all, I wish my kids could go outside and play with chickens. It's just, it's never going to happen in Singapore.
In a big city.
Yeah. But second, I mean, my number one rule is, they can't use this technology without an adult, right? So we're always physically present with them. They're way too young to be doing that. And they don't use it that much. It's like every so often they will come up to my office, distract me, and be like, I want to print something. So I think that's the first rule, is that it's a shared experience.
I love that.
I think that takes away a lot of the risk.
Yep.
But they are very aware already of the idea of AI generated content being fake, right? And so
fascinating.
they will often ask me questions like, is it real or
Wow, that's
Interesting,
cool
yeah.
that they were able to pick that up so fast.
yeah. I mean, they learn about it at school as well, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
Um,
How has it affected school? Has it changed that for them or no?
I don't think they do that much at school. They've just been learning about, that some things you see can be real and some things can be not real. So, yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah, I don't think they've encountered much hallucination. I think they will have the question of truth, I think, will be something which is hard in the world of AI, because I think we are losing the ability to discern truth by looking at multiple sources. So a clear example of this is just search, right? So back in the day, we had to go to a physical library and read a bunch of books and come up with an answer, right? And then search came along, Google search. Now we can search and we can find 10 articles, but at least you have to look through 10 articles and get, different whatever, and then piece together what you think is true. Whereas now you just get that automatic response, right? And as people move towards things like Perplexity, you will start to see this AI as the source of truth.
No, I was just along the lines of discerning what's like an AI hallucination is when it's making stuff up and you don't know if it's true or not. But it's fascinating that they're already figuring that out, which is cool. Like I think that's a key thing, because you look on Facebook or whatever, and the older generation is sharing pictures that are clearly like
Yeah, it's like a baby
generated.
with like 27 arms. You're
Yeah, like
"Why
look
are
at this
you
baby
sharing
riding on a
this?"
horseback. You're like, well, you know.
I'll tell you a funny story on this. So, you know that there's I don't know how true it is, but I read it and it was hilarious. So, there's this thing where thieves and criminals are actually buying fake finger extensions,
Heard about that. Yeah.
right? So that if they get caught on camera, they can say this is clearly AI generated.
What?
Because it's too many fingers.
It's too many fingers, right? Because this is a common
Wow.
AI error.
That
I
is
thought that up quick,
brilliant.
too.
I think that human beings are sinister and brilliant. But my question is like, okay, obviously like the audience is generally a cautious audience for good reason. But like, you know, there's a huge movement in the US to have like no phones before someone's 16 years old, like no phones at all. But there's also like how, as someone who's like a kind of a expert in this field, you know, and works on it, how much does it matter like the person training it? Because like we as like Christians like deeply care about our values. Like if a child is going to go to like a Perplexity, for example, and ask a question, like who knows if it maybe they don't hold our values. So like the comment that they respond with to the child is totally something that, because I just tested this the other day with Gemini and it responded with something, even though generally there's some good things, that was just so antithetical to like what we would believe. It'd be like, oh my goodness. How much does that matter? Like, and are you concerned about that? Like the values of the people making the actual fundamental product, or no?
I don't think it's their responsibility. I think it is the parents' responsibility to exercise media. It's the same as exercising judgment over media. I mean,
Movieguide.org.
maybe you need AIguide.org. I mean, I don't actually know Movie Guide's view on this, but you know, irrespective of what the industry does, as parents, you have responsibility
100%.
for
Yes.
what your
Yeah,
kids
we believe
do.
that.
And that is the primary thing, right?
Right.
Now, so that's my first principle. The second principle is you have to teach your children discernment, which I think is
Right.
also a key principle,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Because you can shelter them up
Meet
to
a
the
wise
age
family.
of movie wise family.
Yeah.
You can shelter them up to a certain age, right?
Yeah.
But after that, they are going to need to have learnt these
Yeah.
skills
The tools.
of discernment.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I do believe I don't think screens are good for kids either, right?
Yeah.
When I let them use a screen, it's out of guilt. It's not out of
Yeah.
excitement. But I just think at some point you have to teach them those skills.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think that it's like a black, because like, why do we, like I read something from the CEO of Anthropic and it was one of the big AI companies, if you don't know, if we've gone too far off.
If you're this far, you
You're
probably
this
know
far,
who we're
yeah.
talking about.
But the thing is that like, and he was like, it's a black box. We don't know how it comes up with the answers. Like one of their big goals is by 2027 is to be able to discern the black box.
Yeah.
You know, but like, isn't it like we don't know how it does what it does kind of thing?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, we kind of know how it works. We just don't know how it arrives at a particular answer.
Oh, okay.
Right. So we know. Yeah. It's like the human mind. We know.
It's like toddlers.
Yeah. Toddler. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Good analogy.
Why are you bringing that in the house? Oh, okay.
Why did you?
Why did you color the couch green?
Why did you put 2 buckyballs in your nose that we had to go to the emergency room to get out?
Yes.
That is not a personal
Why are you
issue.
jumping off?
I'm just saying for a friend. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for jumping on. Is there any one thing that you feel like you are learning from God that you'd like to share before you go?
Well, I think it's just where is our identity? Is it in our success? Is it in our status? Is it in our role? Or is it really in God? I think that's what I've been learning. And I think, like I said, I've succeeded and I've failed. And actually, the failure is much more useful in terms of bringing your identity back to where it needs to be, which I think ultimately probably is more valuable than always being successful. So
That's awesome.
Thanks for tuning in to the We Who Dad podcast. This has been Jeremy and Robbie and Janakan. Thanks for coming on. And if you like this content, go ahead, subscribe, leave a comment about what you want us to talk about next time, or if you have any dad or parenting questions, and we'll see you in the next one.